a warm hello from Brussels. It's an honor to be with you. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really happy that I can share today with you from Brussels, as your voice in Brussels, some of the key developments and the key concerns, the key trends, the key issues that we see from our vantage point. For you at this important conference, we are of course working very closely together with SDCM. They're such an important member of CLEPA under the leadership of Alfred Franke and now also of Tomek Beben. We're looking really forward also to continuing that good cooperation. And again, that's why it's such a pleasure for me to present to you today. I've prepared a few slides to take you through these key points: industry outlook, then our priorities in Brussels, and also a bit of news on a study we've done on the impact on employment and value add as a consequence of the green transition. And last but not least, some of our policy asks when it comes to Green Deal. So let me try and get the slides that have been prepared for this presentation up and running. And in order to do that, I need to maneuver a few things here on the screen. So bear with me until I have it up and then, which is now the case, we can start and dive in. For those who don't know CLEPA yet, we're of course the European Association of Automotive Suppliers. We represent in all more than 3,000 companies supplying state-of-the-art components and also innovative technology for the mobility of the future. We have direct corporate membership, but also very proud to have 14 national associations and also sector associations. Our mission and vision are represented here. We support policymaking at national, but predominantly also EU level, also global. We're a credible party for many authorities and other institutions. So we help ensure also coherent and consistent development of international trade. We promote research and innovation, and we do our utmost to actively endorse a competitive framework for this important sector. Let me first take you through a few comments on the situation in our sector today, the outlook for the supplier industry. This is a busy slide, but it tries to tell you about the many challenges that we currently face. We see a lot of pressure on the business, price pressure, shortages of key materials, semiconductors, also other materials, shipping costs rising, and of course there's the ongoing pressure of having to transform in our sector towards a fully digital and also a fully green mobility, where our members, your members, deliver a lot of new technology, but of course need to invest also a lot in innovation and have to go through a transformation that is really the biggest in the history of our sector. The volume evolution, so units produced, vehicles, looked quite good at the beginning of the year, coming from a reduced volume last year because of COVID. We saw a good first half year, 2021, but of course the situation has changed again due to all these shortages, and the outlook for 2022 is not so much better. We see shortages of chips, but also other key materials, as shown here on the slide, and this will not easily go away. We have to work something out together, and the pressure is particularly high for smaller companies. Around 20% of small and mid-sized suppliers are currently at risk of insolvency, and this is a real challenge, a challenge for all of the sector, because of course a supply chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So it's a situation that OEMs, tier ones, and also others in the supply chain need to address together. And also as CLEPA, we're trying to facilitate that. We did that just after COVID hit with a code of conduct together with the OEMs represented by ASEA, their Brussels association, where we actually stated that the industry can emerge sustainably from a crisis only if all players respect agreed contractual terms, in particular also regarding payments, and also communicate very well about delivery, about call-offs, about ordered products, about investments, and all of that. And that's still very, very necessary. So further talks are ongoing on that. So much to the outlook for the sector. I'd like to take a deeper dive with you into our priorities in Brussels. I mentioned the major transformational pressures and trends already, the mega trends that are digital and green. The magnitude of this transformation is unprecedented, and the challenges require really co-creation and concerted action. I will focus in the next few slides on the green part of this transformation because important legislation and regulation is discussed currently in Brussels. What you see on the slide here represents the proposals made by the European Commission this summer to reduce greenhouse gas emissions for Europe and specifically also for the transport sector in the next few years. These proposals are now under negotiation by both the Council of Member States and also the European Parliament. And they are a package, and they are called the Fit for 55 package because the aim is to reduce by 55% greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. A lot of these, as I said already, concern transport, concern mobility. In red, you see where our biggest worries are. On the one hand, the limitation of the use of alternative, renewable, sustainable fuels for maritime and aviation. We would like to see that extended to road transport, but we're also very worried about the de facto ban on the combustion engine technology moving forward. The proposals made by the Commission actually represent a ban on a certain technology, in this case combustion engine, which we do oppose. We believe this is counter to our to the necessity of technology neutrality, which has been a fundamental principle of EU law in the past few years. It has served our economies and the industry very well, and we believe we should not stifle innovation but push for innovation, and for that we need technology neutrality. So that is one of our key messages as a sector when it comes to this Fit for 55 proposal. It should be technology open. There should also be a role for renewable fuels, and we should really consider and take care of the social and the employment dimension of this important set of messages to make sure that we work through this transformation together and that we leave nobody behind. To give this a bit more flesh on the bones, substance to the message, we've been working with Pricewaterhouse Strategy End to do a study to look at the impact specifically on the workforce and also on the value add of automotive suppliers specifically. We've seen studies covering OEMs, so vehicle manufacturers, also looking at the more macro impacts. But what we're looking at is the impact for automotive suppliers, because knowing what we should do together, having success, being successful also in meeting our climate targets really starts with knowing the stakes. And there is a lot at stake. Automotive suppliers directly employ more than 1.7 million people across the EU, on top of the 1.2 million with the vehicle manufacturers. And yeah, there is a lot at stake, both when it comes to the manufacturing footprint, but also when it comes to employment. So this is what we're trying to unearth and also highlight in the study. There are 3 guiding questions answered by this study to look at the impact of the electrification transition on the automotive supply industry. So we're looking specifically at powertrain technologies and component requirements for value add. What is the corresponding effect on employment for automotive suppliers? And what would a mixed technology scenario do? What would an electrification scenario do? And what would a more radical scenario even mean for that transition and for the future situation also of automotive suppliers? Here you find the key findings of these studies, of this study listed. The first key finding is that electrification puts powertrain employment significantly at risk. we're talking of a risk of over 500,000 jobs, so 500,000 jobs at stake in the internal combustion domain. This is without counting employment created by electrification, but the net loss is still up to 275 employees until 2040. So that's a huge amount of livelihoods impacted and affected. And we find this a very compelling result. It's also very important, an important finding of the study, that the majority of the future value add in our sector will depend on EU battery production. So again, this is something that is being built up today in the EU, but not currently there. The future of manufacturing and employment to a significant extent will rely on the building up of this battery value chain. We expect the steepest net reduction of jobs already in the time frame between 2030 and 2035. So that's very soon, and it's a very small amount of time to manage this enormous transition. The study also shows that a mixed technology scenario mitigates the impact on employment and creates value add. And it also shows actually that Western European countries are likely to be the best placed as strongholds for electrification production. And by contrast, countries in the Central Eastern European region will be more involved in shaping the rundown of ICE, so internal combustion engine technology and vehicles, and there will be reliance there, which is an altogether a different thing to manage and to take into account. Here in a few more slides visualized again also the impact. So we're talking about 500,000 of auto supplier jobs that are at risk. This is about 1/3 of the current workforce, and the new jobs created by electrification will not be a one-on-one compensation for the jobs that will disappear. So there's a huge issue with skilling, reskilling, upskilling, transformation, also relocation in many cases of people that we need to look at and manage together. This slide shows you more detail on the value add impact, where it's also clearly shown that 70% of the total value add is dependent on a European battery chain. So again, there a lot needs to be happening, and also many uncertainties still that need to be addressed around the building up of this battery chain. Every moment counts. We're looking at a huge transition in a very short amount of time, which needs to be managed. We're very worried about it, and we believe policymakers should take more notice. We're worried really that in all of this transformation that everybody is in favor of, it's necessary to meet climate targets. It's necessary to go to sustainable manufacturing and production and also mobility. There's no doubt there, but it needs to be done in a manageable way. And currently, with the current proposals, we are afraid that automotive suppliers specifically are being left behind. Investments are needed with a ban on the horizon. That's very difficult. Central Eastern European countries will remain highly dependent on ICE powertrain, but see then a more difficult future after that. And OEMs simply have more options compared to the automotive supply industry to make this change. So there needs to be special care taken for automotive suppliers. And our study finds that a bit more time and also a mixed technology scenario will actually deliver on climate, but also on industrial footprint, on employment, and on managing this transformation together. And we strongly believe this needs to be done. The solution is in banning fossil fuels, not the internal combustion engine. We strongly believe that. Interestingly, during the latest COP26 meeting in Glasgow, we actually saw some of these more mixed opinions also being voiced there. Of course, there was a commitment to meet Paris, to go further, to limit the heating up of the planet to 1.5 degrees. And that's great, but there was a bit more room for the question of how, and that we need more technologies to get there, and not just a focus on a single silver bullet, which just isn't there. The world is too complex. Electrification is a great solution. We need it. It needs to be it needs to be accelerated, but we also need other options and other possibilities, more choice for consumers, also more choice for industry. We see that also reflected by some in industry. Here, Oliver Zipse, the head of BMW, also the head of ASEA currently, saying that we need more options kept open, and rejecting a premature end of the combustion engine. We also saw the European Commissioner for Transport, Adina Valean, saying that there are synthetic fuels and alternative fuels that have their advantages, and that we need to take that into account and not focus on one solution only. So just to illustrate that this is an opinion that may not get most of the spotlight, but that is voiced also by important other people, and we believe and hope this debate will gain momentum in the coming months, and certainly next year as well, when important decisions need to be taken. We need to be able to go from an electrification only approach to a technology open approach. So yes, there needs to be flanking measures, charging infrastructure for electrification, but also investments in e-fuels and in hydrogen. There needs to be support for re- and upskilling. There need to be incentives, a recognition of sustainable renewable fuels, very important. We need a review clause so we can monitor and keep track of what's happening in the coming years. Will the market pick it up? Will we have the materials and the resources for the batteries that need to be produced? All of these questions still are open. As I tried to illustrate before, we need to have attention for the social dimension, for realizing a just transition. And you find our messages also summed up here on this slide. It's about putting green energy and green fuels into the vehicles that move our economy, that move our people and goods. It's not so much about the technology itself. So let's level the playing field for all of these powertrain technologies, and let's also make sure that the transformation keeps everybody on board and leaves nobody behind. This brings me to the end of my presentation. I thank you very much for your attention, and I really look forward to continuing the discussion and the debate either online or offline. And I wish you a good and successful conference in continuation. So thank you very much, and hope to see you next time in person again. Thank you. Bye.